Welcome to another episode of History of the Popes. Today we turn our attention to Pope Fabian, the 20th successor of St. Peter, whose pontificate from 236 to 250 unfolds in a tale of courage, innovation, and martyrdom in a church navigating the treacherous currents of the Roman Empire. Fabian's story is one of divine surprise, organizational genius, and a steadfast witness sealed in blood. A life that resonates with the paradox of the gospel, where weakness becomes strength in Christ. Let us set the scene. It is January 10th, 236, and Rome is a city taut with tension. The Emperor Maximinus Thrax, a soldier king with little patience for dissent, has intensified his persecution of Christians, targeting their leaders with particular ferocity. The Church mourns the loss of Pope Anterus, whose 40-day reign ended just a week earlier on January 3rd. Some sources whisper of martyrdom, others suggest a natural death, but all agree his brevity left the Roman community reeling. The clergy and faithful gather, likely in the shadowed recesses of a house church or catacomb, to elect a new bishop. Among them is Fabian, a figure who, by all accounts, is an unlikely candidate. The Liber Pontificalis paints him as a layman, perhaps a farmer from the Roman countryside, a man of no great ecclesiastical rank. Eusebius of Caesarea tells a story that borders on the miraculous. As the assembly deliberates, a dove descends from above, alighting on Fabian's head. The gathered faithful, steeped in the symbolism of the Spirit's descent at Pentecost, see this as a divine sign. In an instant, Fabian is acclaimed Bishop of Rome, a moment that recalls the unpredictability of God's election, not unlike the call of Amos, a shepherd turned prophet. Who was this Fabian? The sources are sparse, as they often are for these early popes, but they sketch a man born around 200, likely of Roman stock, rooted in the soil of the Campania. His name, derived from the Latin faber, the bean, evokes the agrarian simplicity of Rome's origins, a humility that would mark his leadership. Yet do not mistake simplicity for lack of vision. Fabian's 14-year pontificate, one of the longest of the 3rd century, reveals a leader of remarkable administrative acumen and pastoral zeal, steering the Church through a brief respite from persecution before the storm of Decius breaks. Fabian's first task is to heal a fractured community. The schism of Hippolytus lingers like a wound. Hippolytus, exiled alongside Pontian to the mines of Sardinia, had reconciled before his death, but the Church still bears the scars of division. Fabian, with a shepherd's instinct, seeks unity. One of his earliest acts, according to the Liber Pontificalis, is to repatriate the remains of Pontian and Hippolytus from Sardinia to Rome, interring them with honour in the catacomb of Calixtus and the Via Tiburtina, respectively. This is no mere gesture of piety, it is a liturgical act of reconciliation, knitting together the orthodox and the schismatic, proclaiming that in death, as in life, the Church is one. The crypt of the popes, where Anterus rests, becomes under Fabian a sacred archive, a testament to continuity amid chaos. However, Fabian's legacy is not only in memory, it is in structure. The Church in Rome is growing, its numbers swelling despite, or perhaps because of, persecution's crucible. To manage this burgeoning flock, Fabian divides the city into 7 ecclesiastical districts, each overseen by a deacon. These diaconia, as later centuries would call them, are not just administrative units. They are centres of charity, distributing alms to the poor, widows and orphans, embodying the Gospel's mandate to love the least. Fabian appoints notaries to record the acts of the martyrs, building on Anterus's work, and subdeacons to assist in the liturgy and governance. This is the Church as an organism, not merely a mystical body, but a practical one, with sinews and bones to sustain its mission. Cyprian of Carthage, Fabian's contemporary, praises this Roman structure in his letters, marvelling at its discipline and charity, a model that would shape the Church's organisation for centuries. Yet Fabian's Rome is not an island. The 3rd century is an age of connectivity, with bishops exchanging letters across the Mediterranean from Antioch to Carthage. Fabian corresponds with figures like Origen, navigating the delicate balance between orthodoxy and intellectual daring. He sends envoys to consecrate bishops in distant seas, extending Rome's influence not through imperial fiat, but through apostolic communion. The Liber Pontificalis credits him with ordaining 7 bishops, 22 priests, and 7 deacons, a flurry of activity that suggests a church not merely surviving, but expanding, planting seeds in the empire's provinces. All this unfolds in a rare window of relative calm. After Maximinus's assassination in 238, the emperors Gordian III and Philip the Arab offer a reprieve from systematic persecution. Philip, some later sources claim, even flirted with Christianity, though Eusebius is sceptical, noting only his favourable disposition. But this peace is fragile, a calm before the storm. In 249, Decius ascends the throne, a traditionalist bent on restoring Rome's ancestral gods. His edict of 250 demands that all citizens offer sacrifice to the pagan deities, a test of loyalty that strikes at the heart of Christian identity. Refusal means death, or, for the less resolute, apostasy. The Church faces its first empire-wide persecution, a crucible that tests the mettle of every believer. Fabian does not waver. On January 20th, 250, he is arrested, one of the first to face Decius's wrath. Cyprian, writing from Carthage, laments the loss of his Roman counterpart, noting that Fabian's courage inspired others to stand firm. The details of his martyrdom are murky. Some accounts speak of beheading, others of death in prison, but the outcome is clear. Fabian becomes the first pope to die under Decius, his blood a seal on his 14 years of service. Eusebius records that his martyrdom galvanizes the Roman Church, turning waverers into confessors. His body is laid in the catacomb of Calixtus alongside Anterus, his epitaph in Greek, Fabianus Episcopos Martyr, a stark proclamation of his witness. Fabian's life challenges our modern obsession with permanence. In a world of empires, Roman or otherwise, Fabian reminds us that the Church's strength lies not in earthly power, but in its fidelity to the cross. His division of Rome into deaconries anticipates the Church's role as a servant, not a master, of humanity. His care for the martyr's acts, like Anterus before him, underscores the power of narrative. In a culture that exalts the emperor's triumphs, the Church tells a different story of men and women who conquer through sacrifice. Fabian's election by a dove's descent invites us to ponder divine providence. In an age when we prize credentials and control, his story speaks of God's freedom to choose the unlikely, the obscure. Cyprian, reflecting on Fabian's death, writes of a church that thrives not despite persecution, but through it, its roots sinking deeper in adversity. And in the catacomb of Calixtus, where Fabian's bones rest, we see the Church's memory made tangible, a memory that does not glorify suffering but transforms it, pointing to the resurrection. As we leave Fabian, we stand on the cusp of another pontificate, that of Cornelius, who will inherit a church bloodied but unbowed. Fabian's 14 years, bookended by a dove and a sword, remind us that leadership in the kingdom is not about duration but depth, not about conquest but communion. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, when we explore the next chapter in this sacred history.